Following England's win over Fiji on Sunday afternoon, I'm going to be assessing each of the players' performances as well as giving them a score out of 10. Now, Steve Borthwick changed up the selection a little bit for this game, which will give us something to discuss. Some bold calls, and I'm unsure if he's going to stick with them going into the semi-final against South Africa. But ultimately, England can draw massive confidence from that victory on the weekend. Not many people would envisage England reaching a World Cup semi-final at the start of the tournament, considering the form going into the World Cup was nothing short of diabolical. Losses to this very same Fijian side and the Welsh in the lead up were the two big games in which England probably were expected to win but didn't end up victorious. So yeah, England can draw massive confidence in the fact they're in a Rugby World Cup semi-final, albeit facing less stiff opposition in comparison to the likes of the pool stage in Pool B with Ireland, Scotland and South Africa in the same pool. So England have had a relatively easy run, but they've beaten who's in front of them, which is all you can do, and they find themselves in a Rugby World Cup semi-final, which is going to be one hell of a game in terms of difficulty. I don't think England could face a harder team. South Africans have got the perfect style to beat England, in all honesty. The things in which England do well, South Africa do just that, sort of 20% better, and a really phenomenal team. Anyway, focusing on this game, in the front row, I'm going to give Ellis Genge an 8.5, Jamie George an 8, and Dan Cole a 7. Now, Ellis Genge is proving to be one of England's most pivotal players in that front row. It's what he offers outside of the set piece that's really impressive. Not only his leadership, but his ball carrying around the field. He loves a ball carry, and he does it very, very well. He came up against some very physical Fijians in the back row, especially with Levani Botia and Mata being the two key names, which were very, very difficult to get past, especially at the breakdown. And Genge definitely turned up in terms of physicality, putting a huge hit on Levani Botia, which really set the tone for the game in the early minutes. On the other side of the scrum at tight head, Dan Cole. Now, look, a decent game from Dan Cole. That's what the score 7 really does reflect. Nothing overly impressive, but he did his job. I thought he was solid at scrum time, but ultimately I'm not going to hide from the fact that he is a liability around the field. If you're a player with any decent footwork, he's the player you want to target. Genge is far more mobile around the field, and England have got two other decent tight head props in Stewart and Carl Sinclair, but Cole is chosen for his scrum time abilities, so fair enough. And ultimately, if England keep winning, Steve Borthwick will keep putting his trust in Dan Cole. Into the second row, Maratoji for me gets an 8.5, and Ollie Chesham also an 8.5. I thought these two were really solid in this game. Line-up time, they disrupted Fijian ball and were very good under English ball. Jamie George linking up with them very nicely. Jamie George had a decent game with brilliant line-out darts, which is why he gets scored an 8. And I thought that he linked up well with the Toji, Chesham and Laws. Some good line-up darts with lots of variation to the throws, which was nice to see. I thought Chesham was particularly impressive with his around-the-field power. I thought he, for what is a very inexperienced second row, I thought he showed some really good, knowledgeable head on his shoulders to really put in some big hits and understand when to compete and not to compete at breakdowns. I thought he was very, very good. Moving into the back row, I've given Courtney Laws a 9, Tom Curry an 8, and Ben Earl a 9. Courtney Laws was nothing short of sensational, becoming a real good leader in that English side. I think if we were to lose in this game, it probably would have been his last game in an England jersey. So there's a lot riding on it for him, and I think it was him who got over the ball to ultimately win the match-winning turnover, which was massive relief to all the English fans out there. Tom Curry, potentially lucky to not concede a yellow card with his no-arms tackle. I wouldn't have argued, really. He had both of his hands on the floor, although I think it was Tuisova was carrying very low and sort of coming in to sort of off of his feet, sort of diving into the floor. He still showed no attempt to wrap. So Tom Curry is one of England's best forwards, and he really does bring an awful lot of physicality and definitely rides the line between legal and illegal very, very finely. But that's what the best players do. They find that line and try to stay on the right side of it. Ben Earl at number 8 was just unreal, getting scored a 9 from myself. Look, he didn't do anything wrong really, and he excelled with ball in hand, went sort of 40-50 metres, looked like he could go all the way at one point. I knew the Fijians would probably catch him in the end, but solid performance from Ben Earl, and he's the reason for a lot of players and a lot of coaches to trust the players in which are really thriving in the domestic competition. Earl had been sort of Saracens Player of the Year for a good couple of years, and Eddie Jones took a while to put his trust in Ben Earl, and it's only really been Steve Borthwick that's instilled the full trust within Ben Earl's abilities, and it's definitely paying off. Into the back line, I'm giving Alex Mitchell a 7.5. I thought he struggled a little bit in this game, especially with his box kicking. Weren't quite where they needed to be. A couple out on the full, and a couple were sort of misdirected. I think he was struggling to find the difference between how to play high tempo and low tempo. A lot of the times, not everyone was really on the same page, and yeah, it looked a little bit just disjointed. But 7 and 7.5 is still a decent score. He fulfilled his role and provided Farrell with a good platform. Farrell gets an 8 from me. I thought he was decent, really good off of the tee, and around the field, it does help to have a bigger fly half. In all honesty, Farrell, 6'2", sort of 95 kilos ish. Is pivotal to have a player that size in comparison to one like George Ford, who potentially can't take as many hits from the likes of Lavani Bottia and Mata and Nasila Sila and all the big Fijian forwards. Farrell could challenge the line, take the ball to line physically, and endure the damage in which that obviously comes with. Into the centres, both of these centres I thought were exceptional, scoring 8s. Manu Tuolangi and Joe Marchant both got over the whitewash. Tuolangi more of a direct route with power to go over in the far left hand corner, and Joe Marchant showing some good footwork to step back inside and score the try. I think this ultimately proves that if you play players in their position in which they play at their clubs, they're going to be far better than playing them out of position in a place in which you feel fits your team best. Like, look, Farrell at 12 ultimately can't take the ball into contact as hard, anywhere near as hard as Manu Tuolangi, which then puts even more pressure on the number 13 to try and get some go forward momentum, and ultimately you end up running out of space, you end up going backwards and playing wide to wide and far too lateral. The modern game of rugby is won by taking the direct route and getting to that try line in the shortest way possible, and if that's not on, then going wide. But unless you suck the players in via going direct, look, there's no point going to the widths, otherwise you'll get isolated and turned over. So good lesson for all coaches there. Play players where they're supposed to be played and they'll do the best job. Seems like common sense, but as an English person, we haven't seen that from our coaching staff in a good while. In terms of the back three, number 11, Elliot Daly, gets scores a 7, Johnny May a 7 as well, and Marcus Smith getting an 8. I thought Daly I just didn't see an awful lot of him, put in a few decent kicks. 7's a solid score. Defensively was reasonably sound, but nothing hugely on show from him. If we look at some of the other wingers this weekend, look at likes of Colby and Arantza, who will be facing next weekend, and then we look even in the Ireland-New Zealand game, you saw the likes of Will Jordan, Farangan Nuku. They have massive involvements in the game. We didn't particularly see that from Daly and May. All they really did was kick chase, which ultimately fulfilled their role in this game. If that's what Steve Borthwick needs them to do, they did that job well. But ultimately they didn't offer a huge lot outside of the basics. Marcus Smith at fullback, the ultimate science experiment. Did it work? Did it not? England came out on the right side of the result, so maybe it did work. I thought Smith ran himself into a couple bits of trouble early on. His famous goose step. He loved to use it, but from fullback, there's no one else around you when you catch that ball, so you either have to kick it or you have to make enough meters to get your support system around you. He found himself isolated a couple of times, in which nearly cost England solid field position. But defensively, I thought he was very impressive. I was under the impression that he would get eaten alive by some of those Fijian players, but he managed to defensively stay on his merit, and he made a good couple tackles on Semi Radradra. Got bounced first of all, but then went back for the second bite at the cherry and was successful. So those are my England player scores and ratings for this weekend's game against Fiji. Let me know your thoughts on my scores in the comment section down below. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Have I been too harsh or have I been too lenient? Let me know as always, and thank you very much for watching.